name is Michael Williams, and I'm here today with Paul Murphy. Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're from? First of all, I know people are going to hear your accent, and it's really cool. And then tell us about what you do for a living and kind of how you transitioned into that. I think that's an interesting story. And then I have a couple of other questions for you. So, Paul is one of my coaching clients, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you. So, as you guys can probably tell, my accent is a little bit funky. I'm from Scotland in the UK. And as Michael said, I used to work in fast food, serving customers, making cheeseburgers, the joys, the fun. But now I'm a freelance copywriter, self-employed, living the dream, as you would like to say. And that comes from Pro90d. I guess we'll talk about that. And yeah, Pro90d has just been an amazing process, and I'm excited to share that with everyone in this little interview.
Yeah. So maybe later we'll talk about how you transitioned and how quickly you transitioned from working in fast food, which is an admirable job, but how you transitioned from that to doing your own business. So in today's interview, we're going to focus because Paul, you've already actually done a couple of things for us. You appeared on one of our YouTube lives, and I have a clip for that. And then you did a video that I also have on my website. And then you wrote up a little review. But today we're going to kind of zoom in and focus on a couple of things. And one of those is a question that people often ask. So for those of you that might be watching this, and either you've just been watching my YouTube videos, which is where 99% of people who find us through YouTube. And then we have a good number of people that also find us through Udemy, Udemy. Right? We have some courses there. We have 30, 40,000 students there. So a lot of people find us there. But one question that people ask is, why would I want to work with you, Michael, one-on-one? It's a good little chunk of money. I've got your YouTube videos, right? You have your self-studies, which is a step up from the YouTube videos because they're scattered, right? So maybe another question that you can answer for people is, why would I want to do the self-study? Why don't I just watch the YouTube videos? So one question is, why would I want to do the self-study? But the big question is, why would I want to do coaching? I have all the information in the self-studies. What do I need coaching for? So I'll pose those questions to you.
Yeah, so the first question about the self-study, why join it? Well, for me, it was really simple. If you want to overcome, whether it's your speech or anything else it is you want to achieve, I like to have it laid out in a simple step-by-step process. And that is exactly what the self-study is. You log in, you have everything you need. All you have to do is execute the actions, take action, practice every single day, and it's right there for you. That's why I would say to anybody to at least join the self-study. But as you said, the big question is about working with you one-on-one, and the benefits for me have been massive. So let me talk a little bit about that. I actually checked a few weeks ago. I first joined the self-study program back in 2015. So that was, 6 years ago? 6 years ago? Yeah. And the problem I had is that I had all the information, which, by the way, another thing I want to say, he may have updated the videos and things like that, but the content has stayed the same because it works. You don't have to update it because it works. So I joined, and the problem I had is that after 30 days or so, I struggled to hold myself accountable. I had the information, I had everything I needed, but I just stopped taking action, even though I was experiencing the benefits and improving my speech, I stopped practicing. And as we all know, speaking is a habit. You develop habits over time. And I hadn't been practicing enough or long enough to build a new speaking identity. So my speech just went back to how it always was. So the benefits of coaching for me was that accountability, to know that I had Michael there every week or every 2 weeks to say, Paul, you're not doing it, do it. You know, he was there to kick me up the butt when I needed that. And that's why I've went from A to B in just a few months, because I had that support. And it's not just about the accountability, it's also having those conversations with someone that understands. Because, you know, you have family, you have friends, but nobody really knows what it's like to struggle with their speech unless you have someone like that. So to have someone answer your questions, to have that conversation, and to have that practice, for me, it has been massively beneficial. And I also said to Michael a few weeks ago that the very first time we spoke, before I even joined Pro90d, you know, I was setting up this Zoom call ready to go, and I was shaking, like my full body was shaking. I was so nervous about speaking with Michael, even though he knows what it's like. So having those conversations that may not seem high pressure to other people, it was high pressure for me. So it was just beneficial in every single way. And also it meant I got results much quicker, which is always a bonus. So I guess that's the main reason. Yeah.
So a couple of things. One, on average, I see people who have either been doing the self-study or watching YouTube videos. On average, they've been doing it for at least a couple of years. Like the average person who works with me one-on-one, they've been practicing stuff for a couple of years. And the vast majority of them have actually seen results, right? They've gotten results, but the problem is sometimes those results are inconsistent for the reasons that you just told me about. So people are not just doing the coaching because they're not getting results from self-study, but it's because they've gotten results, but they either want to go to another level or they want those results to be more consistent, deeper.
A big part of that is, you know, I know you talk about this a lot, is immersion, immersing yourself in the content. And, you know, if you're doing the self-study, just completely immersing yourself. And coaching for me was another way to get even further into that immersion. So exactly.
Now, briefly, Paul, let's talk about some of the challenges that you were having. I remember you used to say when you had to go to the doctor, certain things that you struggled with to say. I'm not sure about phone calls. There were things maybe at work. What were some of the things that you and I know that other people are struggling with, that you also struggled with, and that you were able to overcome as a result of your executing the whole system?
Yeah, I felt, you know, obviously it impacts every area of your life. But for me specifically, when I was working in my day-to-day job, you know, either I could be working in the back or I could be working out front with customers. And I'm a social guy. I like to speak to people. You know, I'm also a magician, right? So I love performing and, you know, things like that. So I love talking to people. But when I was working, I avoided it at all costs, because if I was on the till taking someone's order and it came to a number like, you know, a number that I was struggling to say at the time, I would freeze up. And it wasn't just that one customer that could see, it was all the other customers plus my colleagues. And that was embarrassing. And, you know, to them, maybe it wasn't really a big deal, but to me, and I'm sure you know what it's like, it's that horrible feeling of knowing that you can do it, but in this moment you're struggling and you don't understand why.
Yeah.
And that's really, a really frustrating feeling.
Hmm.
But when I obviously started doing Pro90d, when I started to use the techniques and all the stuff in the course, I started to push myself out, which meant I had more successful speaking situations, which then built momentum. And of course, that builds and builds and builds. So eventually, I was speaking to more and more customers. And I'm not saying that my speech was always perfect. Of course not. It was a practice. But that allowed me to make massive progress in a real short amount of time. And, that's exactly what Pro90d talks about.
Now, what was it that you struggled with your doctor when you had to go out? And I don't know, there was something that you told me that you used to struggle with. What was
Yeah,
that?
so there's multiple. Yeah. So I have yearly hospital appointments for scans, fun things like that. But of course, when you go to the doctors or the hospital, they have to confirm that you are who you say you are. So they'll ask you your name, when you were born, your home address, and all my days, my date of birth. I struggled with it so bad. And I would sit in the house saying, Paul, practice your date of birth, the 21st of January, 21st of January, 21st of January. And when I went to the doctors, I would always get stuck on the number 20. I don't know why. And then when we started Pro90d, I remember I had a scan coming up and I
Yeah.
said to you, I said, I've got this scan coming up. I've got years of bad experiences.
Right.
I'm trying really hard to visualize. And, I was nervous. But of course, because I had been practicing, I had been doing all this stuff, I went to the appointment and I said my date of birth perfectly fine. And a big thing that clicked for me in that moment is in the past, when I had a problem with my speech, I would always apologize for speaking, which I hated, but it was such an automatic response.
Mm.
And that one time, that was the last appointment I had, but I went, everything was smooth, and I did not apologize for my speech. And that was maybe a small moment, but a really big moment for me.
Yeah. So a lot of people come to Pro90d and they're like, I can't say these letters, these words, these
Yeah,
numbers. And as you already know, because you and I talked about some specific tools that you could use in the moment,
yeah,
but that's not all that Pro90 is. In fact, that's not what it's mostly about. There are all kinds of techniques out there, great techniques, many of them from other programs and other people, and a lot of those techniques work. Some of them are the same. You know,
yeah,
you may just call it something different. So, but it's not about just the techniques. It's not about the mechanics. Let's talk about the thing that's helped you the most, and that's really the foundation of Pro90d, the thing that really helps you make that transformation, and that without this one thing, the techniques fall apart. They they're inconsistent at best. They may work sometimes,
yeah.
and then there's other times where they don't work. So what's that one big thing that helped you the most?
Yeah, the one big thing, and this is the magic sauce behind the Pro90d, it's it's changing your identity. And this, on the surface, you may go, oh yeah, whatever, that's fine.
Right.
But this is the foundation, as Michael said, this is the foundation behind it all. And this is what really helped me. Because as anyone that watches this, you probably have problems or you struggle with your speech. And that's mostly because you see yourself as someone who stutters or someone who gets stuck. That's your identity. And this isn't surface level, as I said, this goes deep. This is who you see yourself as. So as you go through the course, as I went through the course and talked with Michael, I learned how to change my identity. And of course, it's a process. It doesn't just happen instantly.
Mhm.
But when you change your identity, that allows the techniques and the strategies to really become as powerful as they can be, because you have the solid foundation, you know? So you switch from being someone who sees themselves as a stutterer to someone who is a superior speaker or an outstanding speaker, or someone that sees their speech as their superpower, you know, as we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really changing that. And that's what you learn in Pro90d. And as I said, it's the magic sauce that really helped me overcome the problems I was having with my speech. So yeah.
So what we do is by executing, by implementing the whole system, you are creating what I like to call a new speaking identity. It actually touches on all aspects of your identity, but we just call it a speaking identity, your identity.
Yeah.
It does that. And what that does is allows you to take massive advantage of all the techniques and the tools, because the truth and the fact of the matter is that the tools and techniques are simply not going to work all the time in every speaking situation. When that happens, and it will, doesn't matter what program you're in or whatever, when that happens, when you're trying to speak and it still doesn't come out, or you make a mistake or whatever, if your identity, if you haven't transformed your identity, then you start doubting and you start becoming discouraged, and then you start slipping back. You say, well, is this really working, or this isn't really working, and I'm still stuttering, I'm still struggling. And so if your identity doesn't change along with using the tools, right, along with the mechanics, if your identity doesn't change, you're going to find yourself always slipping back, constantly seeing yourself. So what Pro90d does is it helps you take your speech, which probably was a liability, right, and turn it into one of your greatest assets. Now, and people may not think that that's possible. Well, how can I go from stuttering down here to actually being what you said, a superior speaker that's better than the average person?
Yeah.
Right. And you'll see. Now, I think you told me about a couple of experiences where people actually unsolicited came up to you and complimented you on you. So say a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was insane. You know, I've always been an approachable guy. I say that in the most humble way possible. That sounds, but in work, when I was working, this was maybe a month into our coaching. I was seeing results. I was a better speaker. And because of that positive momentum and changing that identity, I was speaking to more people. I was interacting in more social situations.
Mm-hmm.
And in the one weekend or the 1 week, this guy comes over. He was a colleague. I wouldn't say a close friend, but, we spoke.
Mm-hmm.
He comes over and unsolicited, as you said, he tells me, some serious things about his life and problems he was having, things like that. And I stood there, I listened, and I took it all in. And, I was so shocked. And at the end of the conversation, he said, thank you for listening. I told you because you seem like someone I can talk to, someone that can, I don't know what it was, but improving my speech and changing that identity, it created that aura around me that people wanted to tell me things because they knew that I would listen and I was a good speaker. I could talk back to them with sympathy and emotion. And then a few days later or a week later, a very short amount of time in between, this other person comes up, and I was on my break at the time, and she starts crying because she tells me this very, a serious thing. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. This has never happened in my life. I had been there for 5 years at the time, and it had never happened.
Mm.
And it was when I started to improve my speech. And by the way, when I say improve my speech, it's also about listening and understanding. So that's a big point as well. which I also learned in Pro90d. And so this happened within a week. And that's when I knew that my identity was shifting, because people were telling me that I was a good speaker, that I was a good listener, that they trusted me. And it's all because of changing my identity and improving my speech and putting myself into those speaking situations. So that's how powerful it can be. And yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. You mentioned something, and I'm working on a new, a new program, a new component of Pro90d that really focuses on confidence. And so I'll just mention this because we have to wrap up here. And then I want you to answer one more question for us. But you mentioned the word trust. When you transform your identity and you start to communicate better, you start to speak better, you also become a better listener. And because of what we've gone through, we become more empathetic and
Yeah.
sympathetic. You do create an aura around you that people want to be in. It draws people in. It's
Yeah.
magnetic and it's powerful. And people trust you more. You have more confidence. The word confidence um, is very, 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 very much related to trust, to confide in, right? So people trust you more. And when people trust you more, they will speak to you more. They will hire you. They will pay you, right? So a lot comes with confidence and trust. And a lot of that comes out of your ability to communicate well. So if
Yes.
you're watching this, just know this is not just about the mechanics, it's so much bigger, so much wider. And it impacts every area of your life, social, relationships, how much you earn, which brings us now to this last part. Tell us about this, the transition you made from working at fast food to having your own business.
Yeah. The main thing that was holding me back in terms of business and my finances was, of course, my speech. And it was really about speaking with clients. It would stress me out. I would shake. I would, all the usual symptoms of that major anxiety. And so when I started to improve my speech, which was very early on, you know, because I was doing the work. So I started to then book calls with potential clients and have that confidence to speak with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, once you start to book calls, clients, it just happens because you're putting in the work. And that all came from my speech. So then I transitioned from fast food to working with clients one on one. And in fact, it was a very quick process, probably, insanely quick. Just a few months ago, I was, working a job that I hated. But being able to speak effectively and have that confidence, I was able to book those calls, speak with clients, and work with the clients I wanted to, not just accepting any clients because I needed the money, right? I was able to really
Wow.
work with the people. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's another lesson for those of you that are watching this. There's some people who either you are going to be interviewing for a job. Some people it's their first job, out of college. Some people it's you're getting out of grad school, or some people you're already working and you want to interview, you want to move up, but you haven't because of your speech. Some of you want to transition out to your own business and you haven't because of your speech. Some of you want to go back to school and you haven't. If you do the work, because if you remember hearing Paul say this, I did the work. I did the work. You got to do the work. It works like magic, but you got to do the work,
Yeah.
right? Right. And when you do the work, you're going, no one can promise you 100% anything because there's too many variables. But I've been doing this for over a decade, and I can almost promise you that if you do the work, you're going to get, incredible results and actually pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
So one other small question, Paul. On average, how much time did you spend each day doing the daily blueprint, the daily routine, just on average?
Yeah, so one part of the blueprint, is just listening to the audios. Well, you can do that anywhere, whether you're working or whatever. But the big things that you learn about in the course, at least 60 minutes a day that I was doing I think that was for the first month, for the first 6 weeks. And then it was at least 35, 45 minutes on the daily. But I think the big thing for me was at least 60 minutes at the start, because as I talked about, the immersion, that's what really gets results quickly. And once you start to get those results, the habit starts to kick in and you can dial it down. I mean, I'll be honest, because I left my job and I worked for myself, I started to have less time. And during the process, my priorities got a little bit out of order. So I was spending less time practicing and more time on my business. But I was able to flip that back around and get it back to number one. So yeah, I would, for me, 60 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. The average that I see, in fact, I've seen this and I've got it dialed in now. If you spend about 90 minutes a day, but 30 minutes of that is listening, and then about 60 minutes of that is practicing, and you can spread that out throughout your day. That's the magic number, 90 minutes, 90 days. If you achieve that, you're going to see incredible results very, very, very quickly. I've just seen it time after time. If I have clients right now who are graduating film, I mean, these guys are just off and running. So if you can get that like good solid 30 minutes of listening time, and then about another 60 minutes or so, and that can swing from 90 minutes to 60 minutes, but I'd say a bare bones minimum of 60 total, but you really want to try to push that up to about 90 minutes. So you're right in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Well, we have to wrap up because I actually have another client. But so first I want to thank you so much for doing this interview. What would you tell people who are considering Pro90d, the self-study, but also what would you tell people who are considering the coaching and are looking at the amount, which really is a drop in the bucket compared to what you can earn very, very quickly? I mean, I've seen people earn 10 times, 20 times, 100 times more than what they paid in a very short period of time. So it's a small investment. But anyway, what would you tell people who are considering it and they have their doubts?
Yeah, I think at the very start, when you look at Pro90d, all you see is overcome your speech. But that's not it. As you said, it impacts every area of your life. And one of those areas is your finances. I mean, myself, I left a minimum wage job. I now have my own business. So as you said, it was a drop in the bucket, a penny in the bucket, whatever the saying is. It is what it is because of Pro90d. And you don't realize that until you start to reap the benefits that, your relationships, being able to speak effectively with your spouse or say what you want to say with potential friends and clients. And, it's a logical choice to me, and I think it's a logical choice to many people. It is scary to join because it is a lot of money, but it's a penny in the bucket when you look at it long term, or a drop in the bucket. Well, so especially for me, and that's what I would say to anyone else. Look at it long term.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for the time and
Absolutely.
for your insight, your wisdom and knowledge, and we will be talking with you again soon.
Perfect. Thank you.